Course Director Emily Ray here. Just wanted to give you guys some positive, productive feedback on those Real Deal Tacos sites that you submitted last night. But first things first, I know that many of you are or have been, maybe still are affected by Hurricane Irma and the aftermath of the storm and the cleanup and recovery of all that. I too have been out of power for quite some time and know the hardship that causes. So with that being said, I am definitely willing to work with any and all of you on any assignments that you aren't able to submit according to the deadlines within FSO. I have not switched the deadlines in there because I want to give you a decent timeline for how you should be completing this work and on what kind of schedule, if you're able to. Of course, if you have been slammed by the storm and can't get to it, I'm definitely willing to work with each of you on a case-by-case basis. But if you are able to handle the assignments as they come, I want to leave those dates up so it gives you kind of a workable schedule to follow. But again, please reach out proactively if you can, before an assignment, and I'm happy to extend it or give you any kind of support that you need. So just let me know. Before we get started with the site review, I want to just give you an idea of my workflow. So I have loaded up all of your sites in separate browser tabs, and I have not looked at them yet. I just access the link via FSO and have them waiting there to take a look at. Now, the reason why I haven't reviewed them is because I want to capture with this recording my first impression of what it is that you've created. And I'm looking for things that are a bit of a disconnect or are not a seamless experience in terms of navigating through the site. I'm looking for things that trip me up or cause pause or provoke questions as I attempt to poke through and take a look at what it is that you've created. In essence, I'm looking for things that make me go, right? So this is actually a screenshot from a music video in the 90s. It was a song by CNC Music Factory called Things That Make You Go, It's pretty popular back then. But if you don't know it, check it out. That's what this screenshot is from. So again, just looking for things that raise questions as I look through your sites. But before I get started, I want to ask you guys to take screenshots of your site as it currently exists, right? So in week 4, I'm going to be asking you to do a revision of that site based on this feedback and your own growing skills, interests, and aptitudes in web design, right? So you'll take this feedback and then everything that you've learned and roll that over into its next best iteration. But part of that assignment is that I ask for before and after screenshots. A lot of times students hear this feedback and they want to just jump on it lickety-split and haven't yet read the assignment for week 4. So press pause on this video if you haven't done so already and go and take some screenshots of all the major pages of your site. And with that, let's jump out of this keynote presentation and over to your sites. All right, so here we are. We've got all of these sites loaded up. I believe I have 7 to go through today, and spoiler alert, they're all going to be for Real Deal Tacos. But what's interesting here is that each of you were given the same materials, the same instruction, but your take on it as a designer and as a strategist is uniquely yours. And so through this review, you're going to see how different people interpreted the scenario and their solution, to the problem or the request that was put forth by Brenda and Bob and Real Deal Tacos. So the other thing is that it would really behoove you guys to watch this entire review, not just the portion that's dedicated to your site, because just if you didn't make a certain mistake or you weren't presented with a certain challenge doesn't mean that you can't learn from another student who did, right? So if you can, I really encourage you to watch this entire review from start to finish. It will really help with the quality of the portfolio sites that you guys are creating this week. And then the other thing that I wanted to say before we go through is that I will spend more time on the front end of this review kind of giving context for the things that I'm pointing out or explaining something a little bit more in depth. And I'm not going to go that deep every time we come across one of those issues or circumstances in this review. And so again, this would be another great reason why you should watch this from start to finish. So here we go. So first things first, I'm looking at the information that's available to me above the fold. That's the area before I start to have to scroll. About very clear branding information right here front and center. Clear navigation, home, about, menu, location, and contact, all very intuitive. This is very on brand, right? So we've got the logo and the color scheme, a nice large banner image back there, and then a welcome message, right? So as I'm starting to scroll, I'm noticing though that the branding information goes away at this point. Now, I like that it's featured here, but wondering if it would also make sense to bring it up into the header in some capacity so that as we continue to scroll, and it looks as if this is going to be a one-page design. Yep, it is. And I could tell that because when I got to this section, the active status of this button changed colors to let me know where I am. Right, so here we've got a short welcome message. I'd say that you could probably use a bit more inset padding within this blue background, right? So don't let your text go outside of this box that I've drawn here, and that way you're making sure that there's enough breathing room around all those elements. Scrolling down, just a little bit of info about the story. What I love to see here is that this designer has taken the opportunity to streamline the information that was provided, right? So you did have a very long, very detailed background story, but kind of knowing that people don't read a lot online, it makes more sense to kind of pick the most salient or most relevant points and highlight those. So we've got the mission. One thing that I'll say is I'm seeing some differences in alignment here as well, right? So we've got this kind of heading or title up here, left aligned, and then we have this center aligned, and then we go left and then center again. It looks a little jagged. It might look a little better if it was consistent throughout. And again, this inset padding is an issue, right? Because you see how much padding is down in this area and just how little is up here at the top. So revisit that 10 Commandments lecture where we talk about making sure that you're giving enough space within containers so that the content within these containers isn't butting up against the edge, right? So scrolling down, I see some pictures here in the menu. This looks a little scattered with this image here. I might align the image kind of up here to the top, right? So that there's a nice clean edge here. And then also leverage some different headings and subheadings so that we can see this a bit more clearly, right? So there's no information hierarchy here. Aside from this underlined aspect, there's no real visual separation. My eyes can't scan this as easily as if you were to bump this up by a few notches, or maybe even employ this text up here, or that typeface, because then I could scan it more easily and jump straight to the section that says drinks, if that's what I was looking for. We've got the Find Us. So here we have these different locations, and it says for lunch or dinner, which is great. And so that's corresponding with this location information. Kind of scrolling down, I'm wondering, there's a large blank section here. I don't know if there's supposed to be a map that didn't load. I'm going to refresh this page really quickly just to see. Scrolling down. It looks just like a big, large, empty area. So that needs to be revisited. I don't know if there's a plugin or something that I'm not able to view, but right now it's just a large blank area. And if I didn't know better, I wouldn't know that there was more information down here as well, right? So we've got the contact. One thing that I'll say is when you are putting a single address up here, it kind of gives the impression that Real Deal Tacos has a brick and mortar location, which it doesn't, because it's a roaming food truck. And so I would say go ahead and get rid of that because you don't want people going to that area and expecting to be able to find this business here. It's nice to see that you have got the social media down here. As I'm hovering over them, though, I can see in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen that these are in fact still linking out to Wix locations. So you provided some social media links for Real Deal Tacos, so it would make more sense to link to those, even if for some reason that page isn't active anymore, because it's a bit of a disconnect for these to link to Wix. It's just one of those areas where dotting your I's and crossing your T's needs to happen in terms of the details. It's great to see the fictitious business statement down here, which is great, just to let people know that this is not in fact a real business. I would say the biggest opportunity here on this site is to observe more inset padding, maybe add more food imagery, because we say tacos, but all I see are pictures of chips and salsa, the branding information up in the header, some alignment issues, applying headings and subheadings more effectively in this area. Let's see. And then perhaps a map here would be nice. You could put pin drops at the different locations to show relative proximity. But overall, this is a very well-designed site, and certainly, with a few tweaks, can get to a really great place to be used as a portfolio piece. So jumping next, we've got another Real Deal Taco site. We've got our branding information up here, social media shares, our contact information, news, about us, menu, and home. So this is our navigation area up here. We got a nice large banner image with a delicious looking fish taco, and then some just kind of hover areas here. So we're highlighting a little bit of text. I love that you've employed these, these icons here as strong visual elements right from the start. Our eyes are drawn to that. I'm scrolling down just to see like what's available here on this home page, right? So we've got branding information, navigation, social shares, some bits of highlights. We've got the hours and locations, which is great, right there on the front page. What I'd say is that looking at this information that's available to me above the fold, which is above the area before I start to have to scroll, I don't see that location information right away. And so then if I was only left with this option and I went to contact, I want to see what it says there. So here it's just basically a simple contact form with kind of a call to action. What I might suggest in this case for this designer would be something within one of these highlight boxes to maybe say like, where are we? Maybe maybe this is a pin drop, a map pin, and then just a little bit of text that says, scroll down to see, where we are at the exact moment, or, check out the map to see where we'll be later today. So here we have all of the different hours and locations, which look great. We see them in a very listing type format here. And you've employed the headings and the subheadings in an effective way. But wondering what this might look like, so we would have to scroll as much as if you maybe applied more of a grid type layout here, where maybe we see Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, kind of all listed in a row instead of in a column, and then maybe the map area right under there. It might also be a little bit more effective down here. It looks like this is San Jose. Again, this one's in San Diego. If the map element was right under the location area. We've got the testimonials, which is great. You've used large typeface there, which kind of draws our attention. Something else you could do is maybe add a thumbnail image of this person saying it. Maybe provide a talk bubble or something that this comes in, just something to draw your attention or interest to. We've only got a couple testimonials here. There's some different schools of thought as far as testimonials go. If you want something that's objective, you're going to go to Yelp, or you're going to go to Google reviews. Anything that is on the business's website itself, is cherry-picked, meaning that the owner is obviously going to select only the best reviews, and for that reason, they don't seem as interesting to read, right? Because you're not going to get that one review that maybe gives a differing opinion. So that's not to say that testimonials don't have a place on these business websites, but you can use them kind of more to break up different, bits of content, or to add some visual bling or pizzazz in different ways if you want to, or just pepper them throughout the site, because you're likely to get someone to stop and read maybe one per page, but definitely not a whole page of them, right? So we've got that fictitious business statement down here, which is great. And I'm going to poke through from page to page. One thing I'll say about this navigation up here is that it's scrunched together, like there's not a lot of spacing between these elements. So for that reason, and because this is all uppercase, it doesn't it's not too distinctive between the words, right? So if this was capitalized, if each of these letters, the first letter was capitalized, our eyes would be able to scan this in a way to separate the words a bit more. But like as in all caps, it makes it a little bit harder to differentiate where one ends and the other begins, especially because there's not a lot of space in between. So just something to think about that. I mean, it's a small usability consideration, but thought I should mention it. Then jump next to the menu page. So here we've got a nice page header. You've done a nice job with these subheadings here. I might go and employ maybe just a different stylistic look for the item itself, and then do the description of it in a different text, right? So that this is separated out just even a little bit more from the description there. It's nice that we've got these images, we've got a nice caption. This page is laid out really nicely here, and then we've got that, that same information down there on the bottom. Jumping to the About page. So here we've got the story, and then we have the repetition of this really big logo. I'd say that this is a bit redundant because we have it right up here at the top. There's no need to repeat it in that because it pushes this text all the way down here to the bottom. Now this looks like that giant backstory that was provided, and part of your job on this particular project was to apply the concepts and techniques that you learned in that Writing for the Web tutorial from Linda to this content, right? So to streamline it, to make it a bit more scannable, and to pull out the most salient points that would be important for the target audience here, right? So definitely some work that needs to be done to this. Also could use some interesting visuals on this page as well. For news, as it's loading up, what I can see here is what kind of looks like it could be a blog, but it's not. These aren't separate posts, right? These are just kind of like bits of info. Anytime that you've got timestamp information or things that might not be relevant next week, it's awesome to share that stuff in a blogging type format. Because when you post new information to the blog, it pushes the older, less relevant information to the bottom. It doesn't delete it, but there's an automatic functionality that exists there to archive that information so you can keep this rich keyword content, right? And so what I'd like to see for this particular part of the site is to leverage more of a blogging type functionality here. It also looks like all this info was kind of just copied and pasted from the documents provided. I would again ask you, like, what is the essential information here? How can I make this visually interesting and so that people will want to dive in and see everything that I have to share? So certainly some more images and maybe some more streamlined text. Oh, wait, hold on. This looks like it kind of, we've got links here. Hold on. So this is making me go a little bit. I'm going to click on this to see what happens. All right, so it looks like we were given a link to that event or to that particular, I guess it was the event. So the underwater robot competition, which is cool, right? So this is where I get more information. But part of me thought maybe it was a blog post. When I clicked on it, it took me away from the Real Deal site, right? So you want to make sure that anytime you're taking someone away from the site that they're on, you're opening that in a new browser tab up here. So again, just a few thoughts on how this could be revised for next week. On contact, we've already poked on this page, and it's just a simple call to action here and then this form. So, again, I see the tendency to want to stack all this information all the time, but what if this information, this kind of call to action filled up more of this area of the screen, and you put your form over here and kind of like a 2-column layout. That way we don't have to scroll as much, right? So it makes it, a bit more effective for, the screen that we're looking on. If this were to be translating into mobile, the content would likely refloat to something that we see here. All right, next up, Real Deal Tacos. We've got clear branding information up here. As I'm hovering over these social media icons, I can see they are in fact linking to the Real Deal Taco locations around the web. We've got home, menu, about us, and locations. A nice large picture here, and then the tagline. We've got the option to order online here. We're going to check that out in just a minute. And we've got a couple testimonials. Wondering, just kind of right off, it looks like you've got this text centered, but then there's like so much strange white space here. Wondering why this is left aligned, and then what's up with this word wrap, like right at this point, like why doesn't it extend into this area as well? So a few alignment issues you could take a look at here. Again, and we talked about, you could add, a thumbnail image of the person who said this, or other little things to make it, kind of visually pop out more on the page. We've got the menu items here. This part looks great. So we see that we've got this aligning in a grid. We've got our subheadings, section headings here. You've given the menu items themselves a bold appearance, which make them stand out from the description. So all of this is super clean and looks nice. It looks like we're looking at a one-page design here because we were at home and then menu. One thing to note here, this is in all caps, but then these are in title case, so just you want to be consistent across there. Jumping into the About Us, here we see that same exact story that we saw on the last site. Just a super bunch of dense paragraph text, right? And so, you want to take good care to streamline this into, there's just the most important information that needs to be shared. And if you don't want to take any of this content out, how can you break it up in such a way with headings, subheadings, bulleted lists, pictures, pull quotes, things like that to make it stand out? Scrolling down, we have locations. So this is kind of an odd little thing here. So like the pattern ends right here, and then it begins again. So that's, you've established kind of this as a design element that breaks up the sections, which is cool, but it seems to me like this would just say locations and then this part would be white down here. We've got some social media that's following us here on the side of the page. It doesn't look like these are active, so you might want to revisit and think about removing those because you already have the other ones at the top of the page. We'll also link these as relevant and necessary. So here, and this was a comment we made on our last review, it's all stacked up, right? So I'm scrolling to see the information. What if we were to put them in more of a row instead of a column? So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then put a map element underneath just to give, you could mock up something that says this is where we are right now, or you could do multiple pin drops to show relative proximity. Great to see this fictitious business information. And jumping back here because I want to check out this order online. It looks like it's a link, right? But when I click on it, nothing happens, right? So if, I'm not sure what functionality you're trying to mock up with this. It doesn't make sense that it doesn't go anywhere. So either have this link to a page that shows, what this is intended to do, or remove it. Either way, that way it's not kind of like a question mark. What's supposed to happen here? And then the last thing I want to say is the contact information, right? So we can connect with you here, but there's nothing that really says anything like contact. A lot of times people see contact information in the footer, but we're not seeing it here as well. That's a very standard place for it to be. I did notice it though that it is in the About Us, but like kind of as an afterthought down here. If you're going to put the contact information in this area, make sure that you're calling it out just to make sure that people can get in touch as needed. Overall, this is super clean. There's a lot of great ideas and a few areas that can be revised for next week's iteration. So here we've got another Real Deal Tacos site. We've got the branding information here, always the catch of the day, home, about, news, menu, order online, and locations. So the first thing I'm noticing is a bit of a deviation in the color palette for Real Deal Tacos. This is kind of, kind of a brighter blue, where this is kind of like a teal and maybe some aqua in here. So, thinking that you should probably sample out the colors within this and make sure that it's consistent. Thinking about the area that's available to us above the fold, which is your most important visual real estate on this site. There's certain things that need to be in place. Your branding information, your navigation, so all of that is great. But also, I'm not sure that testimonials in this fashion are the best use of this space. Like perhaps if there was a large, compelling looking picture of the food and maybe a testimonial on top in a way that works. But for right now, we don't see any food items. We don't really see anything that's really whetting our appetite to go out and get these tacos. So definitely an opportunity here for more, food visuals right off the bat. As far as these testimonials go, we talked about the idea of placing them all together and why you might not want to do that just because they're all cherry picked. It doesn't make them as interesting to read if you know they're all going to be really, really good. But you've done a nice job here of giving them a different visual appearance on the page. So they stand out that way. Again, maybe the thumbnail image of the person who said it, or a conversation bubble, something interesting to make it pop out. But this drop shadow that you've applied to it actually makes it more difficult to read. So there's perfect color contrast with black text on a white background, and the shadowing just kind of makes it look a little bit blurry. So again, you might want to break up these testimonials and put like one on each page instead of all clumped here together. We've got a few nice images here. This hover effect almost makes it look like they're links, but they're not. It might be cool when I hovered over it if I saw what menu item this was, because if I saw this one, I was like, man, is that the blackened fish taco? Because that's definitely what I want to order. That's a great service that you can provide to your site visitors that will help them decide on what it is that they want to get. So we've got our social media icons here. These are in fact linking out to the Real Deal Taco locations. We've got our fictitious business statement, our order online, and then come visit us, right? So view the map. We're going to check out each of those. Let's start here for the order online, and I can see that it's taking me to this page. And here we've got, where I can order this food. I like that it does say that it's currently closed, which is fine. Wondering... I like that you have all of the menu items here as well, and it's cool that you kind of extended the functionality into this and you showed us what this would look like if it was functional, right? Because back on this site we saw order online, but it didn't do anything. But here it shows us, oh, what if I want, 2 salsas? I can add it to the menu, right? And now here's my order, which is cool. So you're mocking up how this would work, and that's awesome. The only thing here is the brown kind of color palette is a little bit off-brand for Real Deal Tacos. So, if you want to keep this, it might be something that you could update to keep it more in line with the visual standards for this particular entity. So going to jump next to the About Us place. Here we have our story. And so we see this huge bit of paragraph text. Now we talked about why you don't want this, because people don't read a bunch of text online. It's part of your job on this project to break it up. Headings, subheadings, bulleted lists, pull quotes. Another thing to highlight about this is that center aligning text in large chunks like paragraph text is a readability issue. In English, we read from left to right, and as our eyes wrap from this point to the new line, it's more visually taxing on us to have to go to a different starting place each time. And so when there's a nice solid edge here aligning to the left, it's easier on us and makes for a nicer user experience. So lots that needs to be done on this page. Paragraph breaks, headings, subheadings, bulleted lists, images. Don't want to see this much dense paragraph text. Jumping next to news. So here it looks like it could kind of be like a blog, but it's not actually a blog. So instead of kind of mocking up what that would look like, I want you to go ahead and actually use a tool, a widget, a plugin, a module, whatever they call it in your chosen content management system. And each one of these posts need to be separate, right? Because of that auto archiving functionality that we talked about, where when you're putting in a new article every time, like thinking about the maintenance of this, let's say Brenda and Bob wanted to add a new event. They come in, they say, I'm going to add a new post. You guys are all familiar with that because you do your own blogs here for MCBS. I'm going to add a new post, and all that does is it puts the newest, hottest information up here at the top, and it pushes this other stuff to the bottom. And maybe you say, I only wanted to show the top 3 posts, right? And it does that. And this stuff down here is not going to be deleted when that happens. It gets archived. And all this stuff is very rich keyword content that also helps your site be found, right? That's why blogs are so great for search engine optimization. One other thing to point out is the stylistic difference between this page heading and this page heading. So you want consistency, right? you want the same look and feel from page to page. And so these are very different in terms of that. Jumping next to the menu, so here we have all of the starters. It's nice that you have these like broken up into sections, right? So here's your headings, and you've got your subheadings with the item, and then your description looks slightly different. These images look awesome, and everything's just aligned really nice here in a grid type format. This page is done really well, so high five on that one. We already checked out or online. Let's check out locations. So here we see the locations, hours of operations, and this is something we've seen consistent from site to site is the stacking of this information. Now, if you want to keep it stacked like this, what about placing a map in this area, right? So that the page is more balanced in terms of the content, that this isn't all just like it isn't all just blank space, but what if there was a map element here and it had pin drops showing the relative proximity, or you could mock up exactly where you were at the current point. So a lot of great ideas on this site, and I look forward to seeing how with a few tweaks it's just going to get to an even better place next week. So here we go, another Real Deal Taco site. We've got our clear branding information up here, our navigation home, about us, location menu, news and info, contact, and customer experiences. So first off, this paragraph text, again, it doesn't need to be, or it shouldn't be rather, center aligned for the reasons that we talked about. It's a readability issue where you want all of your text aligned here. The other thing is that this is all really bold text, and bold is a stylistic choice that you use to emphasize something. So, and it adds weight to it. It draws our eye to it. But when everything is bold, nothing stands out, right? So I realize that you probably chose a heavier weight font here because of this image that's in the background. You want to make sure that this text is being seen. And so there's different things that you can do, to ensure that. You could darken this up a little bit. You could put an opaque canvas here, different things that you could do, but just, these are different strategies that you want to think about. How can I achieve what it is that I want to achieve with the tools and the resources that are available to me? I'm going to scroll down here. We've got it looks like a nice slideshow, but one thing I do notice is that as I've scrolled down, I've lost all branding information. It kind of looks generic at this point. We have our color scheme, but nothing that identifies this in the current view as Real Deal Tacos. So you definitely want to add, something up here to the top to identify this, as Real Deal as you scroll from page to page, right? That way, this repetition of this logo throughout is not going to be necessary. So we have the slideshow image here. I'm going to click through. All right, so these are all displaying. I was wondering if there was going to be any titles or descriptions. As I'm scrolling through as a viewer or a visitor, I might think, which taco is this? Because this is the one I want, and I want to make sure that I order it. Anytime that you're using kind of a slideshow or a gallery module in these content management systems, there's usually a place where you insert metadata in terms of a title and a description so that you can add that keyword-rich content to the images, but also provide that detailed information to help the viewer understand what it is that they're looking at. So here we see that big, dense paragraph text that we've commented on just about every site so far. Again, the first thing to note, never center align paragraph text. Always left align it because it's a readability issue. Streamline this text with heading, subheading, bulleted lists, pull quotes, images, do things to break this up so that it's not just, it almost looks like a word search game, right? Because there's just so much text. And thinking about our target audience and how people read online, and the lessons that we've learned so far this month, it's definitely a service that you can provide for your viewer. We've got some contact information here as well, which is nice. Scrolling down, we've got just that simple fictitious business statement, which I asked you guys to put in there. Jumping next, we're going to go to location. So here, scrolling down, we get kind of like this repetition here. Like nothing really looks like it's changed for me, right? A little bit here, right? So because in the other view on locations, I can start to see this other logo, which is redundant, right? But so like this header is absolutely huge, and it's pushing all of the content down further on the page. So that's something you want to work on, is bringing all of this content up so I'm not having to scroll to see it. We've got the location information here. So again, we're seeing this list of places here. Instead of maybe having these images right next to the list, maybe we have this map instead. And maybe, given that this is the shape of your map, maybe we have the locations Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and so forth, which would add a nice, balanced look to the page there. Jumping next to menu. So here, again, it doesn't look as if anything has changed. Like if you weren't like super observant, you might think like, oh, I just hit a link and I'm on the same page. Again, the redundancy here doesn't need to be this logo again right there. It's pushing this content further down on the page. We've got our page title, our headings, and then these subheadings here. I might go ahead and give this a slightly different visual appearance just because it's really close to that descriptive text in terms of the same look and feel. This GF, gluten-free, woohoo. The blue on blue is hard to read. Somebody who doesn't have good eyes might have missed that entirely. So definitely an opportunity to make that stand out a little bit more. I enjoy this kind of gradient fill that you have on this area, but that is going to be a little bit more challenge in making sure, that all of the text stands out across the full gradient. It's nice that you've included these images here. Again, it might be helpful if there were captions or descriptions letting us know what they are. So scrolling down, news and information. I've discussed this on just about every site so far. These news items, these events, should be in a blogging type format. I'm encouraged to see that you've included this image with each one, right? Because it makes it more visually interesting. But again, it doesn't look like much care has been taken here in terms of streamlining or putting this information into the format that would, kind of best display it or be most absorbable by an audience. If I'm wanting to go to this event, I'm mostly looking for this detail information right up here at the top, and then a short blurb about something, and then I can link to more information. But again, part of the effort on this assignment is to kind of comb through and streamline this experience a bit more. Coming next to the contact information here. So just a simple emails and an inquiry form. Now, one of the things that we haven't seen so far, but I always want to highlight, is the idea that you can put your contact information down here in the footer of the page so that it's available on every page, right? So your header and your footer should be stagnant, meaning that they are the same. They're kind of like, landmarks where no matter where I go on this site, I always know that I can jump back to this place or this place down here and get back to wherever I needed to go to. So you could always have your contact information down here and an intake form or an inquiry form down here, and it would alleviate the need for a whole page entirely. Last but not least, we've got our customer experiences. So these are the testimonials just listed here. This is really nothing, but text on the page. There's so much that can be done here visually. Give these a different kind of fun visual appearance. We've talked about ideas for that, in previous reviews with maybe a thumbnail image or a conversation bubble, or giving this, kind of a different, maybe a scripted looking text or typeface. But then again, the idea that these should be peppered throughout the site. So as to maybe break up different parts of text, or just to have like little bits of different interesting content on each page. Because again, anytime you're sharing customer testimonials on a business site, they're all going to be pretty darn good, because that business owner is not going to let a bad review go up there. So you're more likely to get people to read these if they're not in a big chunk altogether. Overall, this site has got a lot of great ideas, and with a few more tweaks, especially within this header area, moving this content up on the page, it's going to make a big change and a big positive impact on the usability of this particular site. Next up, Real Deal Tacos. So here we have our branding information, home, menu, about, events, and location. We've got our social media up here. It doesn't look like these are actually linked yet, right? So I'd like to go ahead and see these linking out to the areas on the web where you can find Real Deal Tacos. I think those links were provided to you in your Google Doc full of content. Looks like we've got a nice big image slider going through here, and then we've got a bit of text on top. Again, the challenge with putting an image behind text is always the idea that can I read the text, right? You can see how, as I've highlighted it here, just giving it a little bit of a background, even though it's an opaque background, I mean, I can still see the detail behind it. It makes that text stand out even more. This might be a nice recommendation. Maybe instead of having this box, it looks like this box kind of has a shadow, like maybe it's darker inside. Keep going with that. Maybe it's not dark. Maybe it's a little bit lighter, like this blue color here. So that you can still see the stuff behind it, but the words need to be clearly read, because here it gets pretty messy, and it's hard to kind of see that, like, actually take a look at this. When I'm hovering over this button, it's so easy to see what that says. This is what this should look like from the start, right? And then maybe when I'm hovering over it, it just kind of changes to a different color. Same thing with all of this, right? Make sure that when you place text over an image that it can be easily read, otherwise it's not functional, right? So this is our home page, but that's all, right? So talking about our high value real estate, the only area that individuals will see when they come to your site, because when they get here, they can either choose to poke through, or can jump away, right? So you have them here. You might as well put your most valuable stuff up here. Maybe it's the deal of the day. Maybe it's where we are right now. Maybe it's a sneak peek at their latest and greatest recipe. But again, you want to attract people and don't waste the space here on the homepage. So here we have an opportunity to join the mailing list. We've got our fictitious business statement, repetition of these social media icons, but again, these need to be linked out to different locations on the web. Going to jump next to the menu page. So here we've got a nice image slider again, but you see, I'm not going to say this every time I see it, but look how awesome and easy it is to read this description when it is fully white, or more white even than what we see here, like less opaque, obviously. So we've got our menu. We've got a little redundancy here, so we need to get rid of one of those starters. We've got our headings, and then this is kind of the menu item. It looks like it's bold and compared with this, but I'd maybe make this text a little bit smaller, just because there's not enough visual distinction between those two, right? We've got our tacos, our drinks, and our desserts, our sides. All of this reads really well. You've got it, aligned nicely, in these areas. I still, think that a grid type format for this works best. And I'm seeing kind of some different stylistic choices. Like, this is a totally different visual aesthetic than what we see here. So it kind of stands out as different and not in a cohesive way, right? So your headings, subheadings, bulleted lists should be consistent from page to page. So this text and this typeface is very different than this. It's very different than this, and very different than this. You want to basically create certain styles that you're going to employ throughout the site. So anytime you just have a need for simple text, it looks the same from page to page. Anytime you have a need for a heading, it looks the same from page to page. Jumping next to the about, so here we have our story. I mean, at least these are consistent from page to page, but I might argue that they're a little stylistically, differing from the other typefaces that you're using. So here we have all that dense paragraph text. It is aligned to the left here, which is great, but more care needs to be taken in terms of streamlining this into what somebody might actually need. Images, pull quotes, there's a lot that can be done in terms of making this a bit more usable and a better user experience. Events, so here it looks like this is still needs to be populated. Like, this is kind of a under construction page, right? And so just kind of as an aside, like if you were working on this for a real client, what's better than kind of a coming soon page is just in my opinion, nothing at all, because it just shows that either the site's not done. If you're working on something, a blog post about contextualizing, this kind of just raises more questions than it answers at this point. So definitely something that looks unfinished. Jumping next to location. So here we have something I just want to point out so here you call this our menu. And then here, this is our story. And then here it says we're open 7 days a week. Maybe this is our locations, just in terms of the repetition and the consistency. So our locations, and then underneath that, maybe it says we're open 7 days a week. But so you can kind of see how from page to page to page, you're setting up a system of how the information's laid out. I love to see that you've got all these different locations here and the various maps that correspond with them. These are all looking really nice. It does look a little busy. You might want to space this out a little bit more, especially with the all caps version of these titles. It just makes everything look really blocky on the page. So you might want to explore just a bit more of organization in terms of that. And let's see, I think that's all of the pages here at this point. Again, wondering about the contact information, right? So here's our location, and then we can join a mailing list, but how can I call you and how can I email you if I have a question or a concern? Is it on the about page? It doesn't look like it's here. So that seems to be missing, and definitely something you'll want to include in the revision of this. Last but not least, the kind of the navigation bar up here looks like it's really crowding out the logo up here at the top. So maybe just bring it down a smidge so that it's more evenly spaced in this area here. If I can draw this out for you using this tool, this is where it is currently, and we can see how much closer it is to the logo than it is to the bottom here. So what you might want to do is just go ahead, and I would maybe put it more like this is even a little bit too high, but you see what I'm saying. Bring it down a little bit, give a little bit more spacing and padding there, breathing room, as we like to say. All right, last but not least, here we have Real Deal Taco site. And you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and say it. How cool is it, that we've looked at 7 different sites like this, and each one of them has been incredibly creative in its interpretation, of the content for Real Deal Tacos and the ways to display it. There's certainly so much inspiration and ideas that we can get for our revisions of this by watching the review and the choices that our classmates have made. So here we've got our social media up at the top. These areas are linking out to where I can connect with Real Deal Tacos on the web. We've got the phone number up here, which is awesome. Logo, branding information, home, story, menus, location, news, and questions and answers. One thing that I'll say here is the logo itself looks really crowded in this space. We've got tons of breathing room for these navigational options. We've got a lot of extra breathing room up here at the top, wondering if this could be a little bit, not as tall, and so that this was maybe the kind of upper boundary of that area. And then, maybe making this either smaller or making the white space bigger so that it doesn't look like Real Deal Tacos logo is getting scrunched up. So I'm scrolling here, and because this looks like it's a static header, meaning that as I'm scrolling, it doesn't disappear, which is great because it leaves our navigation and branding options available, on every page. But what it does is it kind of reduces the viewable window that we have down here. So it's a smaller, space to see the content, right? So, by kind of moving everything up a little bit more, you're going to get more visible content area here on this page. So we've got our tagline, best fish tacos in San Diego, and then fish in Mexican cuisine. I'll say that this is Baja inspired cuisine, not necessarily Mexican, and I think that the owners, that would be kind of important for you to kind of be characterizing the cuisine, how they do in their other materials. We've got kind of a busy background. This is a very busy image here, and a couple of things to note, right? And I'm happy that this came up in this review because it's an important point when we're thinking about the relevancy of the images and things that we choose, right? So if you're putting this background here, it should like enhance and support the content that's on top of it, not make it harder to read. But here I couldn't even hardly see that these were buttons or options, right? Because they're just kind of part of this busyness. And it also kind of covers the fact that you were cool enough to put the Real Deal Tacos logo on this kind of bus out here, which looks awesome. But when I look closer, I noticed that, oh my goodness, this is St. Pete, Florida, right? And it's not even current St. Pete, Florida, because they have basically demolished this pier. So, again, when we think about San Diego, California, it's not a calm, tranquil bay. It is actually like, the Pacific coast is a very violent, rugged coast. And so this picture is not quite as telling or as relevant of the actual experience. So again, when you're choosing images for your project, you want to do ones that complement and support the aesthetic and the brand that you're creating it for. So for example, like if I was doing a site for a spa, I wouldn't choose imagery that was loud or offensive or, hot in colors, because that doesn't go with the zen vibe and the cool aspect of a spa. So similarly, since this business is in San Diego, you wouldn't choose Florida imagery to support it. So kind of scrolling down here, it looks like we've got these testimonials in this area here. We've got a cool kind of animation effect that kind of like brings our attention to it. It's like dynamic, right? So again, this is another cool thing that you can do with the testimonials because it's drawn our attention. Again, you might want to include an image or something, that make this visually pop. But one thing to notice is there's like awkwardness here with the way that the blue is happening on this screen. And this kind of, it's more of a Tiffany color at this point. This is a bit darker and pops more on the white, but this is harder to see, so it's a little bit off brand. So the white text doesn't look as offers much contrast here on this lighter blue. So I would definitely want to explore something that's more on brand. You can see that this is a bit harder on the eyes down here than this color up here, right? And I'm just being a little bit nitpicky, but then we've got kind of a different blue up here for the links themselves. Now these are minor details, but also just important things to point out, like when you are doing work for a client to try and achieve as much consistency and cohesiveness with their brand, right? So, looking at the information that's available to me here on this homepage, it's not much, right? A lot of times people are like, I don't know what to put on the homepage. Well, you could do bits of teaser content for all your other pages, right? So maybe it's just like a little 2-sentence blurb of who Real Deal Tacos is. Maybe it's the one item or two featured items, the menu or special of the day. Maybe it's on the homepage where we are right now. Maybe it's one testimonial about how great the tacos are, but you definitely want to make the most of this page, and so there's an opportunity for that here. Jumping next to our story. So here, we're seeing something, we see this kind of dynamic push forward with the type here kind of loading in Real Deal Tacos story, kind of the extension of like this white header. And I'm scrolling down and I get to see, it looks, we've got this dense paragraph text again, and the page has some great visual imagery associated with it, but again, it just is really dense. I mean, even spacing, putting a little more space between these lines would help. So here, again, opportunities for headings, subheadings, bulleted lists, streamlining the content, just editorially with knowing, what's more important for the viewers or the visitors for this site, right? Again, we talked about the idea that the menu and the locations are what's most important for this bunch. So I would even think to push these, forward or closer to the home page than the About Us information. So jumping next to menus. So here, I'm seeing like a lot of stylistic differences, right? So the heading for this page, the page title, and when it loads in is a very different visual than what we see here. Now, it looks like this site was built using Wix, which Wix is great because it gives you a lot of creative control, but it's also really tempting to apply too many different aesthetics, right? And then they start to become convoluted and don't necessarily provide that cohesive picture. So, when you are doing your page titles, your headings, your subheadings, your paragraph text, you want them to be same from page to page. We've got the menu items here. This is organized in a grid. They all look awesome. I love that you've got kind of these, this visual indicator here of these items being special for some reason. We've got this broken up in a nice way. But one thing that it's not indicating to me is like these are featured somehow, but is that because they are featured items or are they gluten-free? You've kind of given me an idea that these are different, but how or why? And there's no legend, if you will, so to give me that clue or that information. Super organized page, looks great, but again, just some thoughtfulness in terms of telling people how to interpret that. Going to locations. So where are we? So we've got kind of a different looking truck here. So that's kind of a continuity issue, right? That is a term that you use in film to describe, consistency or kind of a continued timeline or continued aspects along a timeline in certain, in terms of like details, right? So like if you are shooting a scene and in one take the girl has on a red dress and then in the next scene the girl has on a blue dress, that's a continuity issue, just as this truck is different from the other truck, which is a continuity issue. We've got these rotating schedule of stops. I love the use of these icons here, just as a bit of visual bling here on the page. The grid type layout and format works well. Hours of operation, we've got the map, which is great. This page works really well. I like that you've included this image here, but again, we talked about kind of keeping it consistent. Here we've got our news. It looks as if, oh, there they go. So this is the only site that we saw that is actually employing the blogging type format. So here I clicked on one and then I get to see, an image, the details. What I'll say is pushing all of the details kind of below this image. I might bring the image a bit up like this so that it's all a little bit higher up so I don't have to scroll as much. But I'm really glad to see you employing the blogging module for these news because of the archiving features and thinking about the ongoing maintenance of this and the ability for a business owner or an individual to be able to add information to the site is going to be really important. Last but not least, let's jump to the Q&A. So here we have frequently asked questions. How can I provide feedback? How can I book a private event? I'm going to go ahead and click this. What's cool to see is this kind of accordion type style FAQ section here, right? So you call this frequently asked questions. You might want to just call this FAQs because that's what stands for frequently asked questions. Because this is awesome because I get to see all of the questions and I'm like, oh no, this is my actual question here. And then I get to see the answer instead of having to scroll through all the questions to find. It's nice that you've done that. It's also cool that you've linked back to other places. Well, I don't know what happened there. Oh, it just opened in a new window, right? So you will want this to open in the same window if it's on the same site. Kind of curious because I didn't see contact information. So here's the location. Hold on. Home, no contact. Let's see, how can I provide feedback? We always want to hear. So there's our contact information. And it looks like it's just sending an email to the owner of the site and kind of like prompting me here through my Mac mail client. So as you can see, that's kind of like a user experience issue. But number one, I had to search for the contact information. And then number two, I had to, it's launching my mail application, which is not even what I use on my Mac. So it's like, in terms of my experience, frustrating at this point, right? So again, the footer is a great place for contact information. Oh wait, there's the phone number up there. So that's awesome. Maybe just put the email address up here. That would probably be a great fix, is phone, email, and then someone just could copy that and then they put it in their Gmail or their Yahoo or whatever it is that they use. Or, another thing to do is potentially put a form down here in the footer is another great option. Overall, I'm excited to see how many risks were taken on this particular site. There is certainly a lot of room for improvement, but the inspiration was there, and I'm excited to see what it looks like with a few tweaks. So again, you guys, the expectation for this is that you take the feedback that was provided, not just to you, but the feedback that was provided to your fellow students, and apply that not just to your revision of this site, but to your portfolio sites that you are creating, right? So you are both the client and the web strategist, and you have to come up with the content for this site. And please use the ideas, the concepts, and techniques that we've talked about in class up to this point and in this review to help formulate a strategic plan for yourself. Now, your portfolio sites are something that you're going to continue to work on in Portfolio 3. So know that what you submit this weekend is something that you will be revising and continuing to revise throughout your MCBS journey. As always, I am excited and welcoming of additional iterations of your work. So if you want to share that with me for feedback, I'm happy to take a look. Thank you guys for your attention to this review, and let's keep pushing forward this month.